Okay, so up next we have someone named Richard Millington. You probably haven't heard of him, so I will tell you a bit about him. He's from this company called Feverbeat. They're a community consultancy. They've worked with some people that you might have heard of, like I think Apple and Facebook and Microsoft and Google and United Nations, and I think that's a small organization. I'm not sure much about what they do, but he's helped them with some of their community stuff, and he's here today. And Richard also has written 3 books about community, so we'll have to catch those ones. The most recent, called Build Your Community, but today he's going to talk to us about building passionate advocates. So please welcome this stranger to the stage, Richard Millington.
Good morning. How's everyone doing? So today we're going to be talking about growth. We're going to be talking about community. But first, we're going to be talking about Harley-Davidson. So it's 1981, and Vaughan Bills, the CEO, has a problem. His company is going out of business. His market share, which was 75% a few years ago, is now just 25%. His company is getting decimated by cheaper, better Japanese bikes. And as he surveys the wreckage of his organization, he notices there's one bright spark, which is there's a small group of customers that love getting together, going on rides together, and really advocating on behalf of the brand. And so in 1983, he does something that's become legendary. He launches the Harley-Davidson Owners Group and begins sponsoring rallies for people to come together and ride with each other from first in the USA and then all around the world. And this precipitates one of the most remarkable corporate turnarounds of all time. From 1983 till 2004, sales of Harley-Davidson rose every single year. It's one of the most amazing stories that we have. In fact, it's an example of finally getting brand communities right. When all the other organizations are getting it wrong, Harley-Davidson, they're the organization that's finally getting it right. How many of you have heard some version of this story before? Raise your hands. And how many of you know what the problem with this story is? Anyone? The problem is that it's not true. Or to be more specific, I haven't lied to you. Everything I just said is factually accurate. I'm just leaving a lot of information out. Here's what actually happens in 1981. In 1981, Vaughan Bills takes the company private in a leveraged buyout. And finally, when his company is away from the glare of shareholders, he can fix things that he needs to fix. And the first thing that he decides to fix are the bikes themselves. At this point, the manufacturing processes are so bad that half the bikes that come off the warehouse lot or the factory lot have defects in them. Some of them are missing parts. Dealers often have to fix up the bikes before they can sell them. So he goes towards the Japanese factories, uses their just-in-time methodology, and increases that to 90% of bikes that don't have a defect in them. The second thing it does is get rid of a whole layer of middle managers. These are people that love the brand, but actually aren't that good at their jobs, and he decides to bring in professionals to do the work. The third thing he does is launches a big marketing campaign. At this point, Harley-Davidson had done no advertising or marketing for years, so he invests $50 million in a campaign. The fourth thing he does is that he gets the different the data from different bikes together, and he just doubles down on the bikes that are selling well and stops selling the ones that aren't. And I think we can all agree, if he just did these things, that would be great results. But it's the fifth thing that no one ever talks about, but I think we can agree probably has a big impact, which is he lobbies the US government to slap tariffs of up to 50% on Japanese bikes. I would love to make sure that my competitors have to charge 50% more. I don't know if Brian is here, but yeah, that'd be great. And the reason I tell this story is that very often when we think about cult brands, we think about organizations like Harley-Davidson, right? We think about these brands where people advocate because they feel very strong parts of identity. They really feel like they are a part of that brand. And I think there are certain problems with cult brands. And I don't know about you, but I'm so tired of people going on stage and saying Apple is successful, then naming some cult brand aspect of it. Because when we actually go deeper, we find there's so many issues. One of them is that they're very hard to copy what they do. For years, I used to get my hair cut outside of this Supreme store here. And I was always fascinated, there's always a line outside of this store. Like that, it's not that common in this city. And I was like, wow, their customers must love them. I'm going to research them because I think they'll be a great example for my next book. And I spent half a year looking into what they do, and I soon realized they would be a terrible example for my next book. Because the things they do to be a cult brand, you can't replicate. So one, they did almost no PR or marketing for years. They didn't respond to any journalist requests for interviews for years. Two is that they have a bouncer to stop their customers going into the store. Three, they rarely tell their customers what products are coming out when. Four, my favorite thing, is when they notice a product is selling well, do you know what they do? They stop selling it, yeah. That's why there's a line outside the door. Imagine going to your boss and be like, yeah, we should cut the marketing budget and stop selling our most popular stuff. You can't replicate a lot of this stuff. A lot of it is like that meme like, of how to draw the owl. You know, draw one circle, then the other circle, then draw the rest of the owl. That's what a lot of this content about cult brands is like. And two, a lot of it is based upon this idea that we want to belong to brands. It's the idea that our civic organizations, they failed us. And now we're desperate for community and we're turning to brands. That sounds pretty dystopian to me. And is it actually true? If you think about all the products you buy from, all the items that you buy, how many of them do you feel you belong to? There are some examples of this. There are outliers of this. There are certain brands, or maybe some rare brand of whiskey where you might love it and you might want to connect with each other about it. But think about all the items in your refrigerator today. So we've got sriracha sauce. How many of you have sriracha sauce in your fridge? Would you like to be friends with each other? No, you can be. We can set up a group. Or how about Heinz? How many of you have Heinz in your fridge? Has to be Heinz. Do you want to start a WhatsApp group after this? We can do it. I'm happy to do it. But people believe this is what's happening. That if you buy the same brand from each other, we want to belong to that brand. And yes, there are examples, but they are the extreme outliers. Most of us just don't want to belong to brands. And the third thing is that there's actually very few success stories. When I ask people to name cult brands, they always name the same brand. It's Harley-Davidson, it's JetBlue, it's Ben & Jerry's, it's Apple, and then it's maybe Lady Gaga or Swifties or whatever the new thing is. So it's actually very few success stories. In fact, as best as I can tell, there are more books about cult brands than brands themselves. And so all of this is based upon one type of advocacy that we get obsessed with, which is the identity-based, where I identify with that brand and then I'm going to advocate on behalf of that brand. And that works if you are a cult brand. Very few of you in this room probably work for a cult brand. So what lies at the other extreme of this? If identity is one version, then what is the other type? Well, that's when we advocate because we want a reward, where if I do something for you, you'll give me something, and there's an exchange approach to this. And this actually does work. We ask advocates to publish the reviews. We ask them to give references. We do case studies and testimonials. These are the things that we ask people to do. And it does actually work. I remember sitting in a talk by QuickBase a while ago, where they were saying that they got all of the community members together, figured out who had the highest Net Promoter Score, and then they worked with them to leave reviews on all of the comparison sites that are out there today. And as a result of this, they became #1 in G2 Crowd, Trust Radius, and whichever the third one is. And this is an incredible success story. Like, they've generated millions of dollars as a result of doing this. And I think it's absolutely amazing. However, why do you need a community for this? I mean, like, you have your customers, you know their Net Promoter Score, you ask them to leave reviews on sites. Where exactly is the community in this? There's a more direct route that you can take for this. And it works. Like, you can get your customers to leave reviews, but I don't think it's the best use case for a community in this transactional approach. And you see, there's so many easy ways to get people to leave great reviews. A while ago, I bought a new mattress, and it's sleep, so I want to invest in sleep. I want the best mattress that money can possibly buy. So I looked at all the reviews, and I bought a mattress, and it arrived, and I unpacked it. And that cool thing where it inflates over like an hour or so, which is cool to watch. I'm excited. And that thing where you can finally lie down in your mattress, and you ever been to a hotel room where you just sink into the bed? It just feels amazing. That wasn't like this as well, at all. It was a cement slab. And I was wondering, what happened? How can the reviews be so wrong? And then a week later, I get this, which is, now you've had a chance to get to know your mattress, we'd like to offer you to win the cost of it back. Now, they're not breaking the rules here. They're not saying you have to leave a positive review, but it's pretty biased the way it's structured. And also, if you're entering a competition, do you think you're going to win if you leave a bad review? And they've got over 100,000 positive reviews as a result of this. I mean, I hate to say it, it works. However, Another example, I did scuba diving in Thailand earlier this year. And I tried to find the best place that I could find, the best dive shop to go out with. And I found this place, 2,000 five-star reviews, which is amazing. And I went out, and it was okay. It was okay. I don't know why it was 5 stars, though. I would have given it 3. I certainly would have said it made my dreams come true, because that's a high bar, man. But then at the end, we're in the dive shop, and the lady says, if you want a free t-shirt, just leave a review before you go. Now, they're not saying it has to be a positive one, but they're right there. You're looking you're not going to be like, this dive master was the worst dive master. They're right there. And a lot of this is based upon this hierarchy of needs or this exchange mentality by companies like Influitive and others, where you give people something as a reward for taking an action you want. And this does actually work if it's a one-off thing that you want. And it doesn't really need to be a community aspect to this. So we have the identity approach, we have the reward approach, where communities are not, you can't see that because the chairs are in the way, but it says communities are not the best option for this. So what lies in the middle? Well, in the middle is what we call goal-based approach. This is where we advocate because it helps us achieve our goals. And I think communities are absolutely perfect for this. And this is what we call community-driven advocacy. And this is where I think it's so important today, because over the last couple of years of all the turmoil in the tech sector and elsewhere, I think a lot of us have been told that our communities, which were traditionally based on support, now they have to drive growth. And I think to some executives, it's like a button, oh, I'll just push the growth button. And it's not like that. You've got to rewire everything. And so many things to drive growth don't actually work that well. There are things that you could actually do. There's a lot of theory and psychology and actions that can lead to attitudes and can lead to results and all those things. And all that's good. But there's some fundamental issues with this. One is that once you try to drive growth with a community, it becomes tremendously hard to prove the impact of a community. What tends to happen is that an organization will tell their customers to join a community, their best customers will join a community, then the organization will study the people in the community against those that aren't, and be like, oh my God, people are buying more in the community. It must be because of the community. They're not tracking if people buy more since they joined the community. And you can do a lot of complex methodology here, but the more complex it is, the harder it is to understand. So it's harder to prove the impact. The other thing is that you're still limited to people that reach your community in the first place. And so you can find examples in clients that we've had, like Sephora and Edmund 14, where they do kind of make this work, but you still have to get people to visit the community in the first place. And this creates a challenge whereby, why would you participate in a community for a brand you don't buy from? Why would you? That doesn't really make sense. And there's also, is this the most direct approach? If you think about it, if you have to get your prospective customers to join a community first, and then try and get them to buy? Why not just get them to buy and skip the community out entirely? That doesn't seem to make sense. But what we're talking about is what's on the bottom here, which is where you have a hosted community. And then within this hosted community, there are advocates that you help build their own audience. And then they use that audience to help you populate your sales funnel and drive growth for your brand. That's what we're fundamentally talking about here, where community-driven advocacy is using the unique advantages that you already have from your community today, and then using it to nurture advocates. And when we talk about unique advantages, there's very specific things that we mean. Imagine you are the Sonos community, for example, a very typical support community that's out there. What are the unique advantages that you already have? Well, the unique advantages are that you're pretty big already. You've already got these assets in place. You've got access to a smart, passionate group of members. You've got a large audience that you can promote the community to. You've got a lot of knowledge that's already in the community. And you've got resources to support this as well. And the key challenge of what we have, if we want to drive growth, is how do we configure these unique assets we have today to drive and nurture advocates that populate our entire community ecosystem. Not just within our hosted community, because we know there's limited growth we can drive from that. But how do we get these advocates that we can deploy throughout the whole ecosystem of whatever sector we're in, that are building their own audiences to drive great results? And this is different from the traditional advocacy approach. The goals are different. We're not just talking about more reviews and references and case studies. We're talking about populating that whole ecosystem with people that can drive the sales funnel. The size of people that we're working with is different. The benefits, the leverage points, the approach, the measurement as well, all of this is fundamentally different. And what we want to be doing is really figuring out, how do we make this work? How do we take the existing communities we have and start driving phenomenal growth? And what I want to do is share what we've learned over the last couple of years of doing this and try and include as many examples as I can, and hopefully give some ideas of things that might work for you. A lot of this isn't that complex, to be honest. Like, the basic layout is something that we all know already, which is first we have to recruit them and prepare them, then we have to promote their work and influence them, and then we have to measure their results. This part is simple enough to understand. But there's nuances in this that we've learned from a lot of trial and a lot of error of how to actually make this work. And the obvious first step is you have to identify them. And this stage is pretty easy. They usually consist of highly engaged members, people with high net promoter score, CSAT score, those that are most vocal, and the heaviest users. I will say from doing this a couple of times over the last few years that people with a high net promoter score don't usually have the time to do sustained levels of advocacy. The most vocal are a pain to work with. And people that are heaviest users of the product often aren't good advocates at all. But people that are already most engaged in your community, those are the audiences that we've had the most success with. And what you can do if you want is to create a page. Like Wikimedia, it's one of these organizations that is like so old in the community space, we don't talk about them. But they do phenomenal work in building real communities. And they have a very simple page in place of where you can get involved, how you can start your own group, how you can contribute to that community. There's no reason that more organizations can't have a page where people can get involved just like this. Step 2 is motivations. We spent a lot of time thinking about what actually motivates this audience and profiling those motivations and trying to figure out what does work and what doesn't work. And what we found is that there's very specific groups, and our challenge is to make the reward exceed the effort. There's very clearly a line here, which is is it worth it? For almost anything that we want people to do, there's a line where we have to use the sense of status or excitement or success that people have from doing these things to make it exceed the level of effort. And if we do that, that's how we win, and that's how our members win as well. So we can increase this sense of reward by using the assets we have in our community. So we think about who these people are. And what I found generally is that the people that become the best advocates of a brand are usually the partners, the consultants, and freelancers in this space, because they've got a very clear goal from doing that. They want to build the audience. They want to sell to the same audience. They want to be involved in that ecosystem. So if you've got like someone like this for your brand that is creating a course for SAP, why would you not, if you're SAP, not promote the course? Like it's clearly a win. It's advocating on behalf of the brand already. There's such an easy win. Or my favorite example, how many of you know Miss Excel? Yeah? Clearly the Microsoft folks do. Miss Excel is one of my favorite people on the planet. In 2019, I think, she came up with an idea, which was, I'm going to share Excel tips while dancing in videos. And it sounds like the idea which is like, who the hell wants to watch that? Turns out everyone wants to watch that. And you should look this up. It's amazing. And she's built a whole business from this. I think she's doing like $2 million a year with her Excel course now. But she's an advocate on behalf of the brand. She's a Microsoft MVP today. And you see so many examples that are like this. The second group are people that want status within an ecosystem. Usually they want to grow their own audience and have a social media following. And so then you can figure out how can we use our existing community to help them build their audience, to grow their reputation. If you've got someone that's writing a blog about SAP, I think it's a great example, but you can promote the blog. If you've got people that are sharing YouTube videos about your brand, you can help them build that audience. There's so many great things that you can do here. Three is that people want influence within a sector, not just the status, but influence. They want some level of control in that space. And these are people that you can really help build a leading reputation in that space. So I remember a while back, I was shooting some new videos, some training courses that we are doing. And I asked the film crew there, which is, where do you go for advice? Like when you're stuck with any of the Sony technology that you're using, where do you go? And I was expecting to say, we go to the official Sony online community that I know Sony has invested a huge amount of money in. And they said, no, we go to Facebook groups. Every single product has its own Facebook group. And they didn't go to the official community at all. And then I began going into these groups and saying, like, who's running them? Is it Sony? Are they involved at all? And I could find only the tiniest amount of evidence that Sony are involved at all. It's all run by people that want a certain level of influence in that space, or they want to sell to that audience. But that's a good thing. They're still advocating on behalf of the brand. They're still teaching people, bringing new people in. It's an incredible success story. And the final one are veterans of a company. We often forget this group, but this group can be the most amazing group to advocate on behalf of a brand. They're people that want external recognition for their work. They're people that want to build a reputation amongst their peers. They asked me in advance if I wanted to like move the chairs. I was like, no, it's not going to be an issue, but I apologize, that's my bad. But company veterans are like a great audience to work with. We're doing a project with Intel right now where we're getting their employees to advocate on behalf of the brand. And it's amazing how you can have a mixture of like content that's about Intel, content that's about their personal lives, and helping them build their own mini communities on LinkedIn and elsewhere. And you see it works with so many organizations, like Bojan here, I think, from NVIDIA, but he doesn't just talk about what NVIDIA is doing. He talks about what other organizations in that space is doing. He's becoming a trusted source of expertise in that space. Or you can create opportunities where people can have a media presence, where they can respond to interviews and have webinars and things like that. So there's some great opportunities here if you can make it work. Next step is to equip them with resources. One of the first advocacy campaigns that we actually did, where we set everything up, we prepared the advocates, we spoke with them, we gave them like a lot of expertise, and when we launched it, the results weren't anywhere near what we wanted. And we started trying to work out why. Why aren't we getting the results that we want here? And what we found is that generally they didn't have the right resources to do it well. One is that they didn't have the right playbook to use social tools well. There's a difference between being a casual person on LinkedIn or YouTube and knowing all the secret tips to do it incredibly well. Knowing when to include a link or when to not, how to tag in people, how long posts should be. So we began creating a playbook specifically for them on each platform. This is a little bit old now, but like we had a detailed set of examples for every one of these of what's the best format for the best channels and how can you use these channels to grow your audience. And just when they got this, the results were instantly better. They began copying what they see the top people doing and evolving as things change. So this worked really, really well. The second thing that we struggled with was before we worked with them, the brand had taken a very severe approach to people that use any images or content from their website. So there were people that trying to advocate on behalf of a brand and then receiving a letter from the brand's legal department, which wasn't ideal. So we worked with the brand to put together a lot of photos that they could use, videos they could use, multimedia work, things that instantly they can just drop into any post, they can remix it any way they like. This was a great success as well. 3, one of the things that really worked well was having a list of people to follow into a sector. If you want people to advocate on behalf of your brand, it's one thing to just post about what's going on and create content and all that. But it's another thing entirely to actually engage in that ecosystem, be a part of that community. And you have to be a part of a community if you want that content to spread. I think one of the mistakes I see over and over again is that people become a consultant, they start sharing blog posts, and then they don't really get the engagement that they want because they don't have allies that want to help them share it. They don't have people that want to help them. They don't have their own community that they're a part of yet. And we found is that when we created a list of top people in a sector for them to follow, the results were a lot better. Not only did they follow the top people in that ecosystem, that sector, they began interacting with them, and then they got that reciprocity effect as well. So having a list of people to follow was absolutely key. The fourth thing, really obvious, just have someone they can contact internally. Like I know this gets overlooked a lot, but they need someone they can contact internally for any questions about the brand. If you don't have this, you shouldn't do any of the other steps, to be honest. Okay, step 4, boost their contributions. I remember just over a year ago, I was at an event where someone was speaking for the very first time, and he was so nervous about his talk. And I asked him, like, what are you scared of? And he said, well, I'm really scared that everyone's going to show up. I'm going to give a bad talk. I'm going to absolutely bomb. And I get that. But trust me, the worst thing isn't that everyone shows up and hates you. It's when no one shows up to your talk. Trust me, I've been there a couple of times. I'm so glad you're all here today. Otherwise, it's really awkward. But my point is, like, we hate it when we put something out there and we get no response. Like, we give up really, really fast. And if you look at anything with YouTube videos, LinkedIn, or what most advocates do, they create something, they get no response, and then they quit. Because there's a curve, right? Where the more engagement and response we get, the more our enthusiasm begins to increase. And so what we have to do is figure out where can we boost people and help people get to that critical mass, that minimum level of response that's going to make this work. And we found that very specific boosts at specific times make all the difference. I have a newsletter, richardmillington.com, where I share consultancy advice. But like, there's a very specific boost at specific times that like keeps me motivated. I'm like, okay, it's growing, it's good. That's what you need. And we have the opportunity to do that with access to the audiences that we have. I remember when Substack are like promoting what their advocates are doing, even if it's good advice, it really helps people get to know that, hey, I could see these results as well. I'm growing that audience. And so there's lots of great examples of this. Stack Overflow as well. They promote what their advocates in the ecosystem are doing in their newsletter. So there's a lot of great things that you can do here. Step 5, the final point. How are we doing for time? Oh, it's going to be so close. We have to influence the messages themselves. One of the first campaigns I did was when I was working with the United Nations or the Global Fund. We sent a bunch of advocates of the brand, of what we were doing, to Lesotho to talk about AIDS and write about the work that we were doing there. And I felt this is going to be great, and they got there. And then I had a plan to get them to write about what I wanted them to write about. I was going to order them to do it. That was my like 21-year-old brain. I was like, I'm just going to tell them what to do. That's what bloggers really want. You learn some lessons the hard way, folks. Yeah. But what I found since then is that there's better ways to do it. And one of the things is selecting the right messages you want out there in the first place. Like, not all advocates are the same. And we shouldn't treat the whole campaign, the whole group as the same. And we should figure out who wants to talk about what topic. Who is going to be interested in talking about what topic? Think about whatever messaging that you want to get out there from your sales team, marketing team, customer success teams, and then make sure it's aligned to specific individuals. Don't treat all of the advocates the same because they don't want to be treated all the same. 2 is select the right people for the right goals. Very often you can collaborate with them to engage them and get them to connect with each other. but make sure that you are personalizing the approach to each one. Again, just don't treat them all the same. 3, and one of the most effective tips, is to cross-promote. What we found with any advocacy group is that if we get them doing it all alone, they do okay. But when they begin tagging in each other, that's a big win. A while back, I was sitting on a plane with someone who's like a top Instagram influencer in that space. And I asked her, what is the secret that you know that no one else knows? And she said, all the top influencers in any space are part of a pod. Do you know what a pod is? Where they all like and support each other's content and they rise as a result. I'm not sure about the morality of that or whether that's cheating or not, but it works. So cross-promoting is a good idea. And finally, just making sure that you boost them. When they're doing the things that you want, you boost their contributions. You're making sure that they're getting feedback on what they're doing, but those boosts make all the difference. They need a boost when they do something that you like, because then they can promote it more as a result. 0 seconds left, so okay. Finally, if you don't mind a bit of promotion, if you want access to a free course we have, then Gainsight has sponsored our course. Just scan the QR code if you can. And I just want to say it's been amazing to speak to you here today. Thank you to Francisco as well. Thank you everyone so much. It's been an honor. Thank you.
I'm going to take that from you too. Thank you, thank you. Okay, wonderful. Everyone, I'm just going to quickly say that I think that Richard is a bit of a stickler with some things, and so therefore I'm going to tell you that I am a Richard Millington advocate, just so he doesn't put me in his next talk as doing something wrong. Right? See? Yeah.